Hey, friends, welcome to the Let's Get Gritty podcast with Dr. India White. I'm so excited to be here today with you. Happy summer. I hope that if you've got little ones at home, that they are keeping you very busy. I know in my personal situation, my children like to sleep till about noon. That's kind of normal. So if you are, uh, raising little ones and they are enjoying their summer, I hope that you are adjusting as they are sleeping for most of the day. And then, of course, wanting to stay up at night. So happy summer. I hope that you guys have had a wonderful day. I hope life's been treating you right. I hope you've been meeting divine, appointments and connections and that you're able to move forward and your destiny and what you're called to do. Thanks for joining me on the Let's Get Gritty podcast. I'm so excited. Before I get to my guest today, I'm just going to make some announcements. First off, the Let's Get Gritty podcast, it will be featured with Swain Girl Media Channel, hosted by Precious Swain. Thank you for that, Precious. Also, if you're wanting to reach me in any way for any type of event, or you just want to follow me on social media, you can follow me on Facebook at Miss India White. LinkedIn is the India White. Twitter is Indie Speak and Teach. That's INDISPEAKN in the word teach. That's for the caption. Twitter is IWhiteBIL. Instagram is Indie238. That's INDI238. YouTube is India White 123. And TikTok is Dr. India White, which I am trying, y'all. I'm trying to do some things on TikTok. So I appreciate your support. TikTok's kind of different. You really gotta, put some content out there and keep it spicy. So I'm doing my best. So I love any feedback on my TikTok videos of trying to encourage and inspire and go from there. But anyways, so there's some information if you're liking, you're interested in following me. Also, please check out my website, www.india-white.com, for blogs, books, and to schedule me for your next speaking or coaching event or a school training, school workshop, PLC, you name it, I'm here for you. Also, I want to now talk a little bit about Florida. I know Florida has had some special things going on. We've got about 200 new laws in Florida on the works. Wow. So with that said, my next guest is a student and will give us a perspective of some things that has been taking place in a student lens regarding equity and grit in the classroom. He's been no stranger to the show before. I really think he's got a bright future ahead of him. And so I'm so honored to bring onto the Let's Get Gritty podcast with Dr. India White. Alexander Rivera, how are you?
Good evening, India. It's so glad to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, definitely. So I'm glad to have you on the show. And so just for those that don't know who you are, if you could just kind of introduce yourself, let them know who you are, what you do, your involvement.
Well, thank you so much, India, again for having me. My name is Alexander Rivera. I am a public education and mental health advocate based here in Tampa, Florida. I started my advocacy journey a little over 3.5 years ago, and since then, like you mentioned, I've been on this show multiple times talking about a variety of things, whether it be education in the classroom or, just simply, in the way of using it through grit. I've been a Tampa native all my life, growing up here. Originally brought up in, Brandon, but, moved here when I was a little over 4.5 years old. And, it's been an incredible journey since then, whether it be the people that I meet or the community that I'm involved in. It's really great to be a Tampa native.
Okay. So, I'm going to need you to help me out and speak a little louder, only because I am trying to figure out what's going on with the sound. I don't know which end it is, but I'm sure our technologies are, not trying to fail us, but we'll get down to the end of it. So thanks for the introduction. Um,
Mhm.
I wanted to speak with you now that school's kind of over. You're enjoying your summer, right?
Right.
Uh, Tell us about some of the exciting things you've been a part of this summer. Once you get back on board, what are some exciting things that you've been able to partake in? And just talk also about, your desires regarding maybe a culture of grit in schools. So again, you can talk to us about your desires regarding a culture of grit and things like that. um, and then we can talk also about different things that you desire to see as a student. And I do have some questions for you, by the way. From a teacher lens, I have questions that I'm dying to ask you about what teachers can do better in the field so that your learning experience is more equitable, and you can be a more gritty student. So, with that said, I'm going to start with this. So, I know we're always talking about building grit, building a culture of grit, and also equitable practices. So, talk to us first about um, how summer been and what are some desires that you have regarding, I guess, equitable experience as a student.
Well, there's been, a lot of things that I've been, involved with, during the summer, one of which is, having to, a desire to go out into the community in the shape of, having to advocate for those that do not have a voice, like whether it be, attending a school board meeting, both, virtually, considering the fact that, it's been, absolutely crazy. This summer has definitely been, a major, major part of my life for, well, since I've been a teenager. And I've learned an awful lot during the summer, whether it be, learning about, community or helping those in need. It's something that I take very, very seriously. A lot of times people um, take for example, our homeless community for granted. And our church recently is currently in the stages of re-engaging in our food pantry, uh, and so I think that by having volunteer work within the community is incredibly important, especially for teenagers, particularly within my church, who are in need of those bright future hours that are required for graduation. I don't think it's required, but um, it's been an incredible journey, being a part of a community where there's I use the term diversity because Tampa is built up around different ethnic backgrounds. We have Hispanic communities, we have African American communities, we've have Croatian communities. I mean, there's just a really lot of different ethnic backgrounds. And starting in August 11th, I will be partnering up with State Representative Susan Valdez for her back to school fair, which is something that I've always enjoyed doing for the last year and a half now, almost. And this will be my second year doing it, and this will be her 17th year doing it. And I think it's incredibly important that community outreach is something that I hold very, very near and dear to me. And whether it be, getting out and helping others in our community, I think it's incredibly important.
That is fantastic, and I commend you for the work that you're doing. And kudos also to Representative Valdez as well for the amazing work. I think she's just one of those people that um, people say a lot, right? And people can say that they have a certain brand or they say that they have, they represent something. And then you have those that actually are in the trenches doing it. They don't have time to say it because they are all about the work. And so honorable, Representative Valdez is definitely one that I can say that she has definitely modeled for us how to pay it forward and how to be inclusive. And I commend her and kudos to her for the work that she is doing. And thank you for joining her in that. I think it's beautiful. And so I want to talk about now, um, I guess, promoting equitable practices also in the classroom space. Now, I know teachers are in the summertime, people are just enjoying, this time off. But I think that, you being a student now, maybe you can talk with us about what were some things that, teachers, were doing that were right or wrong, whatever. But before you get into that, I was looking up some research and some things because that's what I do. And so I found here from xqsuperschool.com, and they said some tips for teachers to promote equitable practices includes respond, reflect, and amplify. amplify. And when they spoke about amplifying, they spoke about amplifying student voice. So I would love for you to talk about maybe these tips that were given, and if you had some teachers that did some of these things, and what went right in the classroom for you.
Well, there was a lot of things that I was really that was afforded, and especially with being a public school student, one of the things that our school, if you will, has adopted is that we now have what's called a community closet, in which it's very similar to I don't know if it's excuse me one second.
So he's talking about his school adopting a community closet, which is a really so you were talking about your school adopting a community closet.
Yes. And so what it would do is that, if a student was in need of clothes, and particularly our community, was full of I'm sorry. I'm sorry, my mom is driving me crazy. And I'm here in my dining room and she's driving me absolutely crazy. But besides the point, give me one.
So I do like this approach of communities reaching deep and providing for um, the people in the summertime with different things like the health fair, community closets, uh, back to school rallies. All of these things are great. And I think that, leaders will eventually tap into the opportunity to give back and to pay it forward. And so I want to talk a little bit about just some of the concerns that we have. I actually, and I'll wait for Alexander to rejoin us. I know he had to take care of some things. Some of the things that I was concerned about as an educator, um, some of the statistics here, in 2019, we had 15.1 million students that attended high school in the US. However, and then we had 3.2 million students that graduated from high school. But yet, unfortunately, we still have students that are not quite making the cut. We have 2 million students at least that are dropping out each year. And so these are great numbers, but can we talk about the 2 million? Can we talk about what's going on in the classroom? What are teachers doing right? And what are teachers doing wrong? And how can teachers be more fair during instructional delivery so that these numbers will change? So, with that said, I'm going to bring Alexander back on. I think he's ready to join
Yes,
us
I do
again. So, let's
apologize.
answer these questions about what's going on and reflect with your own experience, like what you went through as a student. You have so much power as a student to help us as educators. What went right? What went wrong? How could teachers be more fair?
Well, I think it can be a little bit, in retrospect, a lot of times our teachers, they are truly the backbone of our economy. I mean, as Representative Valdez once put it, an education can never be erased, in which the way that I take it is that, once, you step away from that education, I mean, there are a lot of people, who are over the age of 40 who are getting their GED, simply because, they were, obviously going through some things in their childhood or in their teenage life that they were unable to go to school. But there's a lot of things that our teachers have done right. One of them is to educate our students. I believe strongly in a fair education for all, which means, in other words, that I believe that, like Representative Valdez once put it, is that an education can never be erased. And she is definitely somebody, like you said, that should be admired for her work. Going forward, in the sense of, teachers have done a lot of things, especially, over at my former high school, as I was mentioning, we did what's called a community closet, where two teachers, as well as myself, would donate, or they would have clothes that their former child would wear, and they would, of course, be washed, cleaned, and folded. And if a student was in need of clothes, then they can go to that community closet. I mean, it had anything. And if there was nothing that the teachers could do on their end, then the students would be referred over to the Hillsborough Education Foundation for additional support. And one of the things that I found incredibly helpful with that community closet is that we were able to, we had, I believe, almost, I can't even tell you how many school supplies came in on a day-to-day basis. I mean, we would go, um, they would of course be dropped off in the main office, and we would do what's called, we used to do it every October, which is called a school supply drive, in which we met with the PTA, and we were specifically told that we needed to include things like school supplies, because a lot of times parents do struggle, and especially for those single parents out there who are unable to provide school supplies for their children. And I know the hassle because my mom, was a single parent back in 2008, and having to raise two kids, or excuse me, three kids under one roof. And and plus going to plus being a full-time nurse in that process, and having to have my grandmother rely on Echo, which is a foundation down in Brandon. And there's just a lot of things that our teachers have done right, like they advocate for our students, which is important, but also they think that on my end, I believe every teacher should, have, if a student is struggling, let's say they do not have enough school supplies, then they can refer them over to, like I said, the Education Foundation of Hillsborough County, or vice versa. They can go to what's called the Teacher Supply Store, which is over there off of Howard Avenue, in which they can go, get school supplies for their student. And I know a lot of times our students requested to help not only from the Hillsborough Education Foundation, but also from numerous resources such as Donors Choose, which is one of the top leading organizations for classroom management, and also for donating school supplies to specific teachers who are in need of school supplies.
And I think I agree with you regarding donors choose and all of the different things. And I think, this lens of equity really is talking about access. And I think this is beautiful because it's not necessarily charged with, a student's background or anything. It's just really saying students need help, students need support and resources, and these are the proactive steps that educators can take to help fill in the gaps and help children that really are having this reality. One of my pet peeves is, getting in the classroom and a teacher is sending a student to the office because they don't have a pencil and they're not prepared. Like, I mean, personally, I'm like, teachers like that should reconsider their profession, because if you're sending a student to the office because they don't have a pencil or paper, why are you in education? You signed up for the wrong practice. And that's just my personal opinion. And so, speaking of that, I want you to now talk about what are teachers doing wrong that can be fixed. And you can talk about equity and access. You can talk about maybe some personal experiences or whatever. And keep it real. What are teachers doing wrong?
Well, I think, as you mentioned, having students, they need supplies, to be successful. And I want to share a quote with you. It's from Malala Yousafzai, which reads, "One child, one teacher, one book, one pen can change the world." And as somebody who, had everything handed to him, but there was some parts, in which there was, classmates of mine that did not have the necessary supplies that they needed. Like I remember in my chemistry class, and this was about a year and a half ago. So this was last school year, in which a student did not have supplies at all. Literally, he couldn't even have a pencil, literally. And I remember him writing with a crayon, a single Crayola crayon. Had nothing to write with. He had notebooks. He had everything he needed. He just did not have a pencil to write with, and that really broke me down. It really did. Because if a student does not have the tools they need to be successful, obviously three things are going to happen. One, they're going to obviously be sent to the office. But the second thing is that they are also going to be get in trouble by the teacher for not being prepared. And I know it's on every syllabus, at least on my end, of every classroom teacher that I've ever had. They always have the list of be prepared and come to class on time and being prepared. Um, So yeah, I think it's incredibly important that our teachers need to take it in consideration that half of our students, um, and I'm not saying all necessarily, but a lot of them come from low income families. They don't have whether a pen or a piece of paper. I remember my mother who was in middle school who didn't even have, not even a piece of paper, let alone a pen to write with. And she would go to her teacher and asking for a pen and a piece of paper and was told no, because, she did not have, the appropriate tools that she needed to be successful. Uh, and so and as my mother is, adding, they did not give it to her at all. Even if she, let's say she had an essay she had to write for English, they wouldn't even hand it to her. And as she's mentioning, they did give her an F or an incomplete for not doing the essay and actually had to held her back 7 times in the seventh grade. But I meant 3 times. My bad. But it's incredibly important that we take it into consideration that our children, really do need important things to be successful. Like one of the things that I was very humbled to do this last year, back in 2022, was that, of course, I was being a part of, Representative Valdez's back to school fair. And one of the things that I liked is that what she did with the leftover backpacks, if a student did not have a backpack, she would go out personally into the community and literally hand a student a backpack. And that is the kind of stuff that we need. We need to have people like Representative Valdez to go out into our community. And I even, remember speaking to my principal, and I told him specifically, I was like, "Sir, we have a lot of, families who are on low income who do not have appropriate school supplies." So we went out, and I remember it was a couple of foundations like the Patel Conservatory, which is honored by Dr. Kairansi Patel and his wife Pallavi, in which they donated, I believe it was like close to $1,000 worth of supplies, and they did what's called a backpack stuffing event, where they, stuff the school supplies within the backpack, along with the school's information. I believe it had a counselor card, for students to contact their counselor, or if they were brand new. And so they were able to go out and get the necessary materials that they needed. And I think that was one of the nicest things that our high school did. And I think that we should continue that tradition because of the fact that our students, some of them, like I said, do come from low income and is unable to, purchase school supplies for their families. And it makes me sad when I go back to school shopping and I see mothers having to put supplies up for their children because they do not have enough money. And there was a show that I watched called What Would You Do, which is a show on ABC. And it showed this one teacher who's not getting paid enough because she could not afford school supplies for her kids. I've seen it time and time again where teachers are having to, put stuff back just for, purchasing items they need for their class, whether it be Kleenex wipes or, or rulers or glue sticks or whatever they need to make their students successful.
And thank you for sharing. I think um, this is imperative that teachers are hearing you out today about the importance of just meeting the basic needs of a learner. This is Maslow's hierarchy of needs. How can a student have, self actualization and actually thrive in the higher echelon or the higher ranking of education if they're worried about not having a pencil or paper in your classroom? So I think that definitely teachers should continue to focus on helping to meet the basic needs of learners so that you can have a more fair experience. And speaking of that, the next question I have for you: how can teachers be more fair during instructional delivery? So while you're in the classroom, how can a teacher be fair when delivering content or delivering the lesson to you? What can they do to make it a fair experience?
Overall, I mean, I would say, first and foremost, that Our children, like I've mentioned, half the time they, do not have the necessary time to, complete their homework, because they either have chores or they have something to do, whether it be sports related, and they do not get the appropriate time that they need for study time. And so, one of the things that I think is important and that we need to take into consideration is the fact that I get some of our teachers understand that, their student may have extracurricular activities, some don't, to the point where like they can't even go home to, do their homework because it's obviously noisy. And as I mentioned in one of the previous episodes, half the times our students do not have access to Wi-Fi to even turn their assignments in. And so, and it was incredibly hard when you're having to go to a school and you're supposed to turn assignments in and turn it into that bin, when in actuality half of them request it to be turned in virtually, and half of them don't even have cell phones. I mean, I get a good percentage of, or excuse me, the good percentage of the majority of students in high school do have access to cell phones. But I know, like, especially private schools like a Catholic school or something, I don't know if they have cell phones or not. But primarily, I think that it's important that our teachers need to take it into consideration that, they should get extended time. I mean, if they can do it for IEP students, individual education plan students, then they can definitely do it for students. And this is something that I've actually brought up when my high school hosted a virtual PTSA meeting, and I remember including my comment and saying, we need to have more extended time, whether if it's on the student's IEP goal plan or not, but also for students who do not have an IEP, because they do have extracurricular activities and they're unable to complete homework. And obviously, let's say there's a football game on Thursday night, and a lot of people can't help with scheduling conflicts. But when it comes to students who are unable to turn assignments in, obviously because they're exhausted from, let's say, Thursday night's game, and they're unable to do their homework, which is totally understandable for some. But when it comes to our public schools, we got to take this into consideration, that our students try our best every single day. And I think that growing up, it's incredibly important that, assignments have to be turned in. And but when it comes to the sense of having um, certain things done, such as, turning assignments in, it does create a lot of havoc too. And one of my friends, who was a football player for for our varsity team, literally got kicked off the football team simply because he forgot to turn his homework in. It was one tiny assignment he had to do. He did it in class, forgot to turn it in. Obviously somebody makes a mistake, but to get an F for it is absolutely horrendous. And this is something that I've shared, not only with the county but also with the school board. And they told me that a lot of times our students need to understand that regardless if you're an athlete or not, you need to learn to turn assignments in, which I don't think is right. And I think that the homework policies here in Hillsborough should definitely be updated.
When you talk about the homework policy being updated, the grade book is simply a legal document for teachers to just kind of report what's going on in the classroom. And most of the time, teachers are doing their best to be fair. And most teachers, when they're starting out, they see black and white. There's not really a lot of gray area. And unfortunately, when you're dealing with black and white in a grade book, it can cause you to be um, hmm, kind of heavy on the grades that you're giving, and unfortunately you could fail a lot of students. I remember when I first started teaching, my goodness, I was failing quite a bit of students, to where the administrator had to come in and say, India, you're failing these kids, like what is going on? And I'm like, well, they didn't do the assignment and I gave them this, and I had all these assignments, and I want it to be right, I want it to be justified. And to be honest, I cared about being justified as an educator more than I cared about the success of those students, because I was new and it was about me honing in my craft and figuring it out. And I was completely tone deaf. completely lacked empathy, didn't understand what the students had going on, didn't even factor in the fact that students were athletes, students had jobs, and I was
Mhm.
teaching seniors and juniors. So, for what you're saying here, it definitely lines up to the concern. And then research even shows that homework is not even one of the main factors that causes a great significant amount of gain in the classroom anyway. So homework, it doesn't mean that you do away with it. If you use it right, it can work for you. But if you overdo it, it actually can have a negative effect towards student achievement. And so, that is definitely a gray area. And I think that students do get frustrated because if your math teacher is giving you an assignment every day or every other day, and then you have the same for English, Spanish, social studies, science, whatever your other classes are. I mean, imagine that's like at least 5 assignments a day. And then if you have a special project, and then if you have to play a sport, it can become a full time job, which I mean, I know some people do see schooling as that, but it can be very overwhelming. And, so with that process, I think teachers do need to kind of meet not only as a team in their subject area, they need to meet in cross curricular areas to see, are we giving our students too much homework? You know, as a majority here, like as a team of faculty, what can we do, as a sixth grade team? What can we do as a seventh grade team, ninth grade team, whatever, to make sure our students aren't overwhelmed and that they can actually breathe when they're going to our classes, and that they can actually meet our expectations. So, with that said, I want you to now talk about a time that a teacher successfully implemented equitable practices in the classroom. So, were they able to, how did they make you feel like you belonged as a student? How did they support you when you needed help? How did they, highlight something different about you?
Well, I think that's a really excellent question, and gosh, I mean, there have been a lot of times where I've had so many different teachers. I'll never forget it. There was this one teacher, I'll never forget her. Her name was Senora Oliva, my high school Spanish teacher. And obviously, I was obviously called names because pretty much I was the only, besides my sister, I was the only, um, if you will, gringo in the room, which is white person in that room. But it took me a while. It took me half a semester to fully get adapted to, okay, in the morning, this is what, and it took me a while to learn Spanish, but um, when I only had her, she told me that, it doesn't matter and I've learned this from movies as well. Specifically the movie The Help, where it says you was kind, you was smart, you was important. And that is something that has afforded me the opportunity to um, take it to the next level, if you will, in the power of grit, which I use as great deals amount of courage. One of the main ways that I was able to do is that during the last semester that I had her, we were supposed to do a full on presentation defense. So we had to research a Hispanic individual, in which I chose my godmother, State Representative Valdez. The reason why is because she is my godmother after all, and she is also a personal hero of mine. And what was the tricky part, and I'll never forget it, is that instead of doing it in English, you had to do it completely in Spanish. And let's just put it this way, my Spanish is not as good as it was well over 2 years ago. I mean, and I just remember feeling completely and utterly embarrassed. And I just remember running out of the door, literally crying my eyes out. And my teacher coming to find me. She's like, "What's the matter with you?" And I told her, I said, "I feel like I'm not trying." And she goes, "You are trying." She goes, "I know it's not easy." She goes, "You think it was easy for me to deliver my PhD defense?" And as somebody who, as you know, India, I know what it's like, doing a dissertation defense, but I've never actually defended a dissertation before. But it does take a lot of grit because you're in front of your committee and you're having to speak in a in a crowd of a lot of people. And so I've learned that you don't have to be scared. And so I just remember taking a very calm, deep breath. And I remember going into the room. And although I received a C for it, but at least I tried my best. And I did tell my teacher, her name is now Dr. Aliva. And so I told her, I said, Dr. Aliva, I said, how do you think I did? She's like, well, she goes, the only thing that you need to understand is about tense and past tense when you're speaking. That was the only advice that I was given, but she's like, "Baby, let me tell you something. It doesn't matter what people call you." She goes, "You." She goes, "Many people call me ugly." She goes, "Do you think I let him weigh mine down?" She goes, "No." She goes, "I am thankful every day to God that He puts breath in my body." And she goes, it's not always easy, especially when you're delivering a speech such as what I did." And she was like, "At least you tried." And I ended up passing the course with a B, but it was a very, very hard time for me. But I mean, there are a lot of stories I can give over this next hour, but it was particularly Dr. Oliva that made a major impact in my life.
Well, Dr. Oliva seems to be a rock star, so I'm thankful that she was in your life, and that she cultivated grit. And that was another question I had for you, and then I'm going to ask another question. But she helped to cultivate grit in you, and I don't know if you recognized her process or not, but maybe you can talk about her process of cultivating grit, or if you had another teacher that for sure, like, yeah, they cultivated grit in my life. They pushed me when I was ready to give up, ready to quit. They would have let me settle. So, talk about that. And what did that feel like for you?
Well, I don't know if this is a teacher or not, but State Representative Valdez is one of them who I call my teacher. And she really, because she inspires me, as well as our community on a day-to-day basis. And I just remember one time telling her that I feel like giving up, that I feel like quitting high school because I was obviously going through a very, very rough time. I was already diagnosed with depression and PTSD, not PTSD, but in particularly um, depression to the extent of me having to almost take my own life. And so one of the things that I remember is that I had posted on social media, particularly Twitter, that I wanted to end my life. And I think it was maybe about not even about 20 minutes later, my mom gets a phone call from my principal saying, "Hey, we got an anonymous, person saying that your son told or posted on online that he wanted to kill himself." And the reason for that is because I was going through a very, very dark period in my life. And so from then on, I learned that, it isn't always easy masking depression. But Representative Valdez once said to me that you are special. And so she is a very personal teacher of mine. And so I told, and another way that she, helped cultivate through grit was when I I mean, it was a very, very dark period, as I mentioned, and I ended up having to get help, for my depression. And, it was, like I've mentioned, a very, very hard time for me. But help, with her, by my side, she instills in me, as well as my sister, every day to never give up. Because I was at a breaking point of having to leave school for my depression. And she even told me that, even though you're going through a dark period in your life, just remember that there is always light at the end of the tunnel. And so, what she meant by that is to always never give up. And in the end, you will always see a result. And so that is what has cultivated me through grit.
That's beautiful, beautiful advice from Honorable Representative Valdez. And I just want you to know too on the show, you are loved and we value you. We cherish you, Alexander. I'm so
Thank you.
thankful that you have joined my life and the life of our viewers because you're teaching teachers stuff. Like they're taking notes. We appreciate your voice. So, that's why I said keep it real because, they need to know. They need to know the truth. So don't sugarcoat anything. And, you've got great aspirations. And just remember this: life does come in cycles. You will have ups and you will have downs. Every single one of us have them. And when you realize that, when you're in that down phase, you have to keep telling yourself, it's only for a moment. It will go up. It will get better. It has to. And you push through it with grit, great resilience in time. You push through it by being resilient when those negative thoughts come, those negative feelings come. Choose to do something that will make you feel good, whether that's going to the beach, going to the mall, going for a walk, going for a jog, getting your favorite ice cream. I was thinking today, I was like, man, because I'm trying to eat healthy, right? And so I'm like, man, but I would really like one of those ice cream cones, like with a bunch of like Oreo pieces and nuts and stuff on it. Like, I don't know, like vanilla ice cream. And anyway, so I'm just like thinking like, man, I really, because it's going to make me feel better to indulge in that,
I've had
and,
temptations
and
like
I
that.
can't keep apologizing because I want a Snickers bar or I want, like I just got to, sometimes you just got to just do something that is not toxic, that will make you feel better, or call somebody that will make you laugh. Lift up someone else, let someone in your space, and just realize you're not in this life alone. You are put here on purpose. You know how hard it is for someone to be created on the earth and actually go through the whole process of becoming who we are as humans. I mean, it's a lot of work. And so the fact that you fought your way to exist means you have a purpose on this earth. And so now you have to fight to find out what that purpose is, because there's something that Alexander Rivera can do that India White cannot do. There's a specific purpose that you have to meet that I can't do for you, that Honorable Representative Valdez cannot do for you. That's what makes all of us unique. We all have something different that we bring to this earth. So remember your uniqueness whenever you're down. And you have to tell yourself, I might feel down, but I've got a purpose. And there's only one
Mhm.
me, and people cannot duplicate me. You can try to duplicate me. You can try to steal my ideas. Like Missy Elliott said, copywritten. So don't copy me. But the thing is, you can try to steal people's ideas. You can try to duplicate who they are, but they're still their unique self. And their
Mhm.
unique self will shine bright, and you can only try so hard. So remember that whenever you're like, man, I don't know what my purpose is, I don't know if I matter, I don't know if anybody likes me, remember that you have a purpose and you're amazing and you matter. And that's why I exist in this space today. It's because I am an uplifter. I like to help people blossom and shine. And I like to um I guess cultivate positive, good, beautiful energy in light, because we only live once in this body on this side, and so why not have a beautiful experience, right? So thank you for sharing that. Now I want you to talk about representation. Now I've been doing a lot of studies lately about representation, and I'm going to put out some blogs and stuff soon about some of this stuff. But I want you to talk to us. Does diverse representation matter in the classroom? Why or why not? So, do you need a diverse teacher, or in your textbooks, do you need diversity of examples in the book, or people that are writing the books to you? What's your opinion?
Absolutely. And I think that there is definitely, I think we need definitely a lot of it. But, given the fact that we're living in a society where, people are not always equal, you cannot, people get discriminated on a regular basis just for being a member of the LGBTQIA community. And as somebody who identifies as a member of the community, I can say for, firsthand that there is, certain, and I'm very grateful that Equality Florida did come up with safe spaces in classrooms. And there's, diversity definitely belongs in the classroom. I mean, people tell me on a regular basis that it doesn't. It does actually, because of the fact that given our history. Like, for example, we cannot erase slavery out of a textbook. It's literally etched into American history, and it's something that we cannot go back and then say, "Oh, let's take it away." No, we can't even take away the civil rights movement, let alone Hispanic Heritage Month. There has been a lot of times where people have come up to me and asked me the exact same question that you asked me: does diversity belong in the classroom? I say it does because of two reasons. One, I believe in a fair classroom for all. And, especially going to a public school where, you have different backgrounds, whether, you're African American, Hispanic, or Arabic. I've seen a lot of it. And one of the stories that I'd like to tell is that I had a friend of mine who had came over from Saudi Arabia, who learned absolutely no English whatsoever. And so the way that me and her communicated was through Google Translate. And she told me about how she was being bullied for wearing a hijab. And so she was obviously going through some things, and I remember texting her saying it's going to be okay, everything's going to be fine. But literally it got worse to the extent of her almost having to take her own life. And so it was, and given my recent, story about how I almost committed suicide, it was, hard on me, but I, got the help that I needed. And I told her, I said, you're a safe space. It doesn't matter if you're a member of the LGBTQ plus IA community, or if you're simply looking for a resort to look to, whether if it's a friend or a counselor to speak to. And I told her, I said, I'm here for you if you ever need me. And so diversity definitely belongs in the classroom, because without it, our entire classrooms will be, like I said, probably full of chaos, and probably, have, teacher, students standing on desks, and then, just, going completely AWOL. But, going forward, I think it's incredibly important that we put diversity in our classrooms.
Thank you for sharing your lived experience and about your friend, you know, beautiful Middle Eastern queen from Saudi Arabia. Wish her the best. And I thank you for sharing. And sometimes, there's just been talk like, do we really need diverse teachers? Or, but studies have actually shown that students have that all students, even students that aren't from that particular diverse community, benefit from having diverse representation, educators, leaders, authors in their classrooms, in their school buildings. They need that support. And so I think that, there was a hesitancy. I know currently right now, teachers in the United States, there's about 80% that are of European descent. And there's about 70% of students of diverse populations. And when I say diverse, I'm talking the racial lens of diverse, meaning, the other category, which that really gets on my nerves. Other. So think of other. You've got, biracial. So black. And then when I say biracial, what am I saying? Right? You've got black and white. You've got Hispanic and white. You've got black and Hispanic. You've got Asian and white. You've got black and Indian. You've got it's the spectrum is just growing, and it's the human race, right? And so what's happening now is students are wanting and desiring, they're requesting to have more leaders and representation in their books that look like them,
Hmm.
that can bring cultural relevance into their books, so that, because it's shown too that emotions and their attitudes are tied to the motivation and how they learn, right? So meaning that if they see something that they can relate to, something that's relevant to their culture, relevant to who they are, then that's going to motivate them to want to learn. So tell me your
Absolutely.
thoughts on that.
Thoughts
Your
on.
thoughts. Tell me your thoughts on having, I guess, representation in the textbooks or in your teacher, maybe having a teacher of your same ethnicity or your same language, your same culture. How does that motivate you to learn in their classroom.
Absolutely. I mean, I've had, basically every teacher from every race to every gender. And I think that what I've learned from them is that it doesn't matter what your skin color is or what your religious background or whatever your preference may be. What's important is that your job is specifically is to educate our youth and to empower them to always, learn. And I remember my fifth grade teacher, who's now currently an assistant principal here in Hillsborough County, about how she went through being discriminated for being African American. And mind you, this was a little over 7 years ago. And um, she told me that, she wanted to quit teaching altogether. And she was only a first year teacher, fresh out of USF, had no idea, what to expect. And I did tell her, I said, look, don't give up. I said, in the end, I said, God will reward you in the highest favor possible. And at that time, she did not understand what I was talking about. But later on, when she did become an AP, she called me and she was like, you were right. 7.5 years ago, you were absolutely right. And I said, well, I said, just remember, and I've told people this on numerous occasions, that you are justified by God's love. It doesn't matter if you're, um, 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 and I look at it this way. I mean, there's a quote that Elizabeth Taylor once said, and it's particularly towards the LGBTQ plus community, where she said, there is no such thing as a gay agenda. It is a human agenda, which means that it doesn't matter where you come from, you are loved unconditionally. And so, as an ally, as well as a proud out individual, I have shared my experiences. And, coming from a different background, I come from a Puerto Rican father and a European mother. So I fully understand, first on that, it was tough. And, for my grandparents, when they came over here from Puerto Rico and Cuba, and what they went through. They were being discriminated on a regular basis, and obviously, this is during the time of the Jim Crow South. And so it didn't matter if you were African American or Hispanic, you were still discriminated and basically placed into that category. And so I remember my grandfather used to tell me stories of how he used to go to work and used to be called a very, very not so nice slur, which I'm not going to say, but he faced discrimination on a regular basis to the extent of him having to quit his job, which later turned into an amazing construction company that he built from the ground up with just him and my uncle. Both of them worked tirelessly until it became a full-fledged construction company to what it is today. And so that is something that I share with people. It doesn't matter where you come from. And this is something that Rep Valdez used to say at every single graduation. You can back me up on this, India. She used to say, never forget where you come from. So it doesn't matter if you come from um, Stacy Brewer. I know who that is. That is my former guidance counselor. Oh my God.
She is amazing, isn't she? Love
Yeah,
her.
yeah, she is. She's my school mom. Oh my
Yes.
God. I mean, I'm trying not to cry and I'm on a podcast. Oh my
I tell
gosh.
you, Stacy, you're amazing. You're amazing, chick.
I miss you,
Doing great
girl.
things.
But as I mentioned, there is, a lot of, hope in this society. And and there is, times where I do come up to people and they ask me, they were like, how did you do it? I said, well, I said, I look at it this way. I've always been an open book. I feel like it's important that our children need to understand that, they may come from different backgrounds, but I know that they are loved unconditionally. And I think that's what's important is that, as an advocate, and I put that in my email signature on a regular basis, that I am a public education slash mental health activist, and I take that very, very seriously.
And I'm thankful that you have pointed out your experience, and I think representation does matter, especially cultural inclusion, people that are coming to the United States. I'll never forget my experience as an administrator, having students come straight from Cuba, Venezuela, Honduras, Argentina, just everywhere, not a lick of English. And they had to then enroll in high school and then take the same FCAT, whatever test that everybody else was taking. And we had to get those kids through. I just, I mean, I was scarred by that because I'm like, where
Mhm.
are the equitable resources to help these children adjust linguistically, to build a culture? Thank goodness we had a beautiful, powerful, strong Hispanic culture on that campus where students could get there and help each other belong, help each other thrive. It was beautiful. I mean, I remember going to those proms, and I remember just feeling like, man, I wish I was Hispanic, because they were amazing. Those girls were beautiful, and the dancing and the culture was just, it was so just beautiful. And yes, I'm very thankful of who I am, but I'm just saying they brought me into their culture, and I fell in love. And I do have two brothers that are Puerto Rican, so but I'm like a melting pot over here. But I just say that because it was just so beautiful, all inclusive, and it's because that particular public high school where they were doing a lot of things right regarding inclusion for students, diversity and equity and access for all. So
And I also see a
with that
comment from
said,
my good friend
thank you.
Mary, who's out of Palm Bay. Hello, Mary. I mean,
And
it's still
Alexander,
good
it's
tonight.
I'm just so proud of you, and I think that people like you that are advocates for equitable practices, you're going to really make a big, powerful difference, in society. Never underestimate who you will become. You never know. Like, I mean, I think of my humble beginnings and the beautiful community, the support that I now have behind me. I never thought, I would be able
Mhm.
to, rub shoulders with people like yourself, and people like, our wonderful friend, Honorable Valdez, and others like Stacy, and those that are, supporting us here on this live feed. But I say that because, never underestimate who you are, because you don't know in one moment how the Almighty can just take your life and just catapult it into something great. You have a great purpose and a great cause. And so I appreciate you being on the show. And I know we have talked and we've had a blast. Usually the show is only 30 minutes because now it's a podcast. I know we're used to the real talk show, which is amazing, which I might have to bring back.
Yes.
But
Yes.
the podcast has been great, and you've shared your heart to teachers. So I want you, Alexander, to share with us maybe one word of advice for teachers that are preparing to go into the classroom. Maybe from your student perspective, what would you request teachers to do, or what type of attitude would you want them to have?
Well, I think it's very, very simple that our teachers need to kind of, and I always say that a teacher needs a cup of coffee first thing in the morning because they have a lot of students to deal with. But my word of advice is simple: just be gracious, be humble, be polite, and just take one thing at a time. I mean, there have been times where teachers kind of just want to digest everything all at once. Me, on the other hand, I look at it this way, that our school system is uh, very, very important. And so, with that being said, I mean that in the nicest way I can, and if there was one word to describe it, is simply be you. You know, don't let somebody say, oh, you're a teacher because, obviously you're not certified. Well, not entirely true. Every single teacher has to be certified. But going forward, our students definitely need to understand that there is a lot of hard work, um, and um, and same thing for students. They need to be polite to their teachers because, after all, they are the ones who literally stay after school every single day, putting grades in the grade book to make sure that they don't have to, that their AP for curriculum does not have to be upset with them because they, missed a deadline or they missed a PLC because of the fact that a student doesn't, really. Um, how do I put this into retrospect, is that, and I used to joke with Miss Brewer, and I used to say, I know what a PLC is, and she used to laugh every morning, and I used to go to her office every single morning right before school, and I would tell her, you know, and her former colleagues, and I would tell, well, not her former colleagues, but her present colleagues, and I used to say, "Oh yeah, don't forget." And I used to go in on a Monday because I obviously knew that I could not go into the office at Tuesday at 8 o'clock because they obviously were in PLC. But I used to remind them. I was like, "Don't forget PLC Tuesday," and they were like, "How do you know that?" Uh, I mean, I've been in education for almost, like I said, for almost 18 years, and um, this upcoming year will be my senior year, um, which is something that I look forward to. But there's a lot of work to get done in order to make sure that I am going to be successful and to graduate on time.
I want you to know I'm very proud of you that you are going into your senior year, and also you have no choice but to be successful. So,
Right,
we will be on you all
like a
year.
hawk.
You have no choice but to be successful, and
Yeah,
we will
Stacy
help
knows
you
that. She even told
navigate
me,
that
she was
path of
like,
success.
"Yeah, you are, gonna be doing what you're supposed to." And I call her my school mom, and the reason why I call her my school mom is because of the fact that, she is just, phenomenal, a great coach, and when I do, and I will actually be returning to the school that she is a counselor at in August. Of course, I had to take a step back to, focus on some personal conflicts. But, once I come back, I will be on it. I will be,
Excellent,
I'm just gonna,
excellent.
try my best, and,
You're gonna do
it,
phenomenal. Yep,
fingers
you're
crossed.
gonna be just fine. I plan to get a graduation invitation,
Oh,
so
you
I'm
will.
I'm
You'll
gonna
get that
be
like
in.
3 weeks before invitation or before that.
You have no choice but to be successful. So, I am in the picture. So I am going to make sure that this happens
You and Stacy
with
both,
the
I
team.
know.
So, with that said, it's been great speaking with you. How can people reach you? I'm going to put your contact information up,
Okay.
Alexander, for those that
Oh,
are
that
interested.
I'm gonna
Here's some of
update
his
that.
information, guys. If you're wanting to have him come and speak, or you need a student advocate for anything, his information, he's got his LinkedIn. It's the LinkedIn stuff, and then Alex B. Rivera. You've got his Twitter, the
I'm
real Alex
updating
B.
it now.
Rivera, Facebook, Alex B. Rivera, Florida, Instagram, Alexander B. Rivera, and then email is Alexander Rivera, um, or dot Rivera. Yes. Is that okay?
Yes, and also I updated my LinkedIn, so it's no longer
Okay, and
Alex
I
B.
just got
Rivera,
that.
and
Let
I,
me see if I can
you know,
give you guys
um,
um
hang on, I'll
his
be able to
updated
tell you in a minute.
LinkedIn is going to be that one, AB Rivera 12. So this has been a great show. Thank you so much, Alexander, for
It
joining us again.
has,
You're
and
taking this time out of your summer when you could be sleeping or eating pizza, playing video games till
I'm
3 in the
used to
morning,
it. I
which I
mean,
know all of y'all are doing.
during the school year, I would go to bed like for instance, right now, especially during the summer, I pretty much have any free range, you know.
Yeah,
I mean, when it comes to sleep, but once July 31st hits, strictly back on back to school time. Like,
that's
yeah,
great. Tell your
like
mom I
literally,
commend her for that.
and it's something that I brought up with, she really doesn't, but I'm not one of those teenagers that has to be like, if you've ever seen movies where like, oh, your teenager has to be home before curfew. I don't have a curfew. I just, simply plan it out when I want to. Like, for instance,
Nice.
let's say if it's a Friday, I will literally go to bed like at 7:30 instead of it being like, I don't know,
But you're being
11:30
responsible,
on
and
a school night.
that's good that you're responsible and stuff. So, with that said, Alexander, it's been wonderful having you on the Let's Get Gritty podcast. I appreciate your
Thank you.
advice for teachers and for leaders. We definitely will take that to heart of, remaining gracious and giving opportunities. And definitely, teachers, remember what he said about homework. So, and that's one thing too, when we're trying to space out homework, let's be more practical, more realistic, more empathetic with our babies that we're teaching to make sure that it's not overwhelming them and that they can be successful, especially your seniors. So, with that said, guys, please remember to connect with me whenever you get a chance. There's my social media information again for you. And then, of course, you can check out my website, www.india-white.com for blogs, Guys, I've been writing a lot of blogs on education, so help me out, share them, like them, be nosy, read them, and then books and to schedule me for your next speaking event. So with that said, guys, it's been phenomenal being on the Let's Get Gritty show with all of you. I wish you guys a blessed night. Have a great night, Alexander. Okay, till next time,
Yes.
sweetie. See ya.
All right. See you then.